Well, hello and welcome to the Speakeasy. My name is Paul Feesey and I am joined by...
I'm Glen Scrivener. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm surviving the apocalyptic heat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fortunately, this room is always freezing.
Yeah.
And today it's quite pleasant.
It's just fine.
Fine.
It's fine.
So it's nice, actually.
You go upstairs, it's 10 degrees warmer.
Yeah. So we can't leave this room.
No.
And for the next few days. But no, we're doing okay. Hope you guys are all doing okay at home. Today we're talking about the question, is politics post-Christian? What does that even mean? What are we talking about?
I heard Andrew Klavan call President Trump America's first post-Christian president.
Where's this going?
A while back. And I thought that's very interesting because you think about presidents all the way up to Barack Obama and you think, yes, they certainly know how to talk the talk, even if they don't have a personal faith.
Right, sure.
Tim Farron, the Christian member of parliament here in the UK, he was the leader of the Liberal Democrats. He once said that in America, you have to pretend to have a faith to get on, and in the UK, you have to pretend not to have a faith to get on in politics.
Yeah, sure.
And yet, when the first person I heard say that President Donald Trump was America's first post-Christian president, I was like, well, that's interesting, and it sort of made sense of a lot of things, such as his inability to answer just straightforward questions about the Bible. This, in particular, is quite hilarious.
Okay. You mentioned the Bible. You've been talking about how it's your favorite book. And you said, I think last night in Iowa, some people are surprised that you say that. I'm wondering what one or two of your most favorite Bible verses are and why.
I wouldn't want to get into it because to me that's very personal. When I talk about the Bible, it's very personal. So I don't want to get into verses. I don't want to get into...
There's no verse that means a lot to you that you think about or cite?
The Bible means a lot to me, but I don't want to get into specifics.
Even to cite a verse that you like?
No, I don't want to do that.
You're an Old Testament guy or a New Testament guy?
Probably equal. I think it's just an incredible... The whole Bible is an incredible... I joke very much so. They always hold up the Art of the Deal. I say my second favorite book of all time. But I just think the Bible is just something very special.
Probably equal.
It reminds me of, isn't there a clip in The Simpsons with Reverend Lovejoy? He said, have you thought about consulting the good book? Any particular part? Oh, it's all good.
It's all good. Everyone's a sinner in this book, except this guy. Yeah, so Donald Trump is a man who looks uncomfortable in church. He certainly looks uncomfortable holding a Bible. There was this famous incident from 2020 where they cleared the space in front of a prominent church right near the Capitol building in Washington, D.C., cleared away protesters. Did they even use tear gas?
There was talk of that, yeah.
There was talk of that in order to get his photo opportunity with the Bible. And then if you can listen out for what the crowd are saying and how Donald is responding, that's quite special too.
Hey, Bible.
What are your thoughts right now?
We have a great country. That's my thoughts.
So for those listening on the podcast who couldn't see that, you've got Donald Trump standing in front of a church, looking at a Bible like he's never seen one in his life, before holding it up next
like
to
he's
him.
never held a book before.
Before holding it up and then standing there awkwardly and saying, we have a great country. Like, I'm not sure what the relation is to that.
Someone else, is that your Bible?
No.
It's a Bible.
It's a Bible, baby.
What are your thoughts? We have a great country. Yes, like totally seeking
Jesus is my favorite American.
Seeking this religious moment, like, goes to a lot of trouble in order to get the church in the background, the Bible in his hand. What are your thoughts? We have a great country. And I think the post-Christian thing works because, I mean, Trump, when he did go to church, he went to the church of Norman Vincent Peale, who was the author of this massive bestseller, The Power of Positive Thinking, which is this massive Protestant work ethic, just we live the American dream, you can do it, which is this sort of, it's developed from Christianity and the belief in the individual and the belief in the equality of all people and the belief in sort of liberty, religious liberty at least. But then from that, you get the sense of everyone must be free to release their own divine spark within themselves, and to
potential in them,
the potential and the power of positive thinking and sort of name it and claim it type stuff. Comes from very Christian roots.
Manifest it.
Manifest it, and then Donald Trump becomes the sort of man that he has, and it's not Christian, but it's unimaginable without Christianity. And I think that's kind of what has made Donald Trump a kind of a post-Christian figure.
Right, yep, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
But then a lot of people want to draw the links with Boris Johnson. And not just the hair, but large. I mean, when people first sort of talked about Boris Johnson, well, he's a bit of a populist, isn't he? And he's a Brexiteer because it's the populist thing. And he sort of rises to prominence around 2016, and so is he the British Trump? And I've always sort of thought that's a bit silly. They're probably just noticing they have blonde hair. Is there anything deeper to that? Well, certainly the ways in which both men held on to power far beyond the democratic mandate, far beyond when they should have, and certainly Trump calling massive questions, about the election, and the election was stolen, and stop the steal, and all the events around January the 6th. Donald Trump had sought to cling on to power beyond the democratic mandate, and Boris Johnson similarly. I mean, how many resignations?
It was well over 40, wasn't it? And
wow.
That was after
within a day,
after scandal, and already, wasn't it? So
yes, like anyone else would have resigned many months earlier. There was scandal after scandal. You're right. There was Partygate. In terms of him putting rules on others that he himself was not abiding by around lockdown. And then the thing that sort of brought him down really was lying about a fellow MP, Pincher, and his sexual harassment. And lies around sexual harassment actually ended up being his downfall. But he was going to cling on, and fascinatingly, at the end, when he finally made his resignation speech, he never actually resigned. People are sort of noticing.
Yeah, a few people have said that.
Never uses the word.
Come September, I never said I was going.
Yeah. Is he giving himself some wiggle room? But just listen to what he said outside of number 10 when he basically resigned.
But as we've seen at Westminster, the herd instinct is powerful. When the herd moves, it moves. And my friends, in politics, no one is remotely indispensable. And our brilliant and Darwinian system will produce another leader equally committed to taking this country forward through tough times.
Our brilliant and Darwinian system. So that is what makes me think Boris ain't post-Christian. Boris is pre-Christian.
Okay.
Largely.
So unpack that then. Is he...
Yeah.
He just thinks it's the biggest dog should come out on top.
Yeah.
Survival of the fittest. It's
right.
Nature is read by tooth and claw.
Right.
So the person who gets to the top is the biggest bully in the playground.
Yes.
Whoever wins the fight. Doesn't necessarily mean they're good for the position.
Yeah.
They're just big and bad.
Yeah.
Which is a great description of Boris.
Yeah. He's top dog. And he says that our brilliant system is Darwinian. And at that point, you think, he thinks he's Julius Caesar getting knifed in the back. Right, because that's basically that is basically the way undemocratic societies operate. The top dog is top for a bit,
yep,
and then he's
until
toppled.
Someone topples him.
Yeah, and then that's kind of Boris's. Does Boris really look at the grand history of parliaments that sort of go back into the medieval period, in which this hard-won belief that rulers only rule by the consent of the people, and that rulers are under God, and that they have a kind of a compact with the people, a contract with the people, a covenant with the people, if you like. And it's totally coming from kind of Old Testament theology, New Testament theology, brought through into the medieval period, and the first parliaments start to emerge in sort of the 13th, 14th centuries. And it's not a Darwinian thing, it's a very undemocratic thing to say that actually our system is Darwinian.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who was it? Winston Churchill sort of joked that democracy is the worst form of government after all the others, and he said the best kind of government would be benevolent dictatorship tempered by assassination. Like, did he mean it? I don't know. Boris, a biographer of Winston Churchill, we have this brilliant Darwinian system where he thinks of himself as the benevolent dictator, and he's been assassinated, and that's the sort of thing. So is he post-Christian? Is he Christian? I wonder whether he's even pre-Christian, because obviously an old Etonian goes to Oxford to read classics. Okay, and have you seen Boris Johnson reciting the classics?
I have not. No.
Should we have a look
Yeah.
at Boris? And what's fascinating here is he's mayor of London at this stage, and he's being asked by his interviewer, what gets you through when times are tough? When your back is against the wall, where do you turn? He does not turn to the Lord. He turns to ancient law. Let's have a look at the Iliad.
And when things are really tough, and when they are, if they ever find themselves stranded in the bush, say in Arnhem Land, or in Kakadu with a crocodile at the foot of the mangrove, and they are up the mangrove, and the crocodile is at the foot, and there is absolutely nothing for it but to hang on, and all they can do is think of all the things that they can remember. You're telling me to shut up. I'm going to shut up in a minute. All they can do is keep themselves conscious by reciting all the poetry that they know. They will not do better than to preserve, to pickle, to conserve in their brains forever the greatest classics of every, such as the Iliad. And that is what I do. When I'm in trouble, I recite to myself, Main Thea Peleia Jo Akileos. Ulomenain, Homoria Kaios Algiatheke, Palastiftimus Psukas Aedi Proiapsin, Hero O, now Tuste Hiloria Teukicunestin, Oyonosi de Passi, Diostietele or Bule, Exhude ta prota, Diestate nerisante, Atreides Hianaxandron kai Dios, Achilles. Letus kai Dios huios, Hoga Basilei Colothes, Nusonana straton Orstikakain, Ole conto de laoi, Hunecaton crusain, Atimase naretera, Atreides.
Oh, it's just embarrassing, isn't he? Like, it's just embarrassing to watch.
Isn't that what you do when you're backed into a corner
Oh,
by a crocodile?
absolutely. Yep, totally. When I'm in the mangrove.
Yeah. He was in
Hanging on.
Australia at that stage. That's why he's making those comments. But yeah.
You say that's why he's making those comments. That's just what Boris does.
Yeah.
He could have been in the Antarctic. Wouldn't have made any difference.
Yeah. But when he's asked a serious question about what gets you through, he quotes the classics, and like the Bible is not part of the classics for him. He goes back to Homer's Iliad, and the Iliad is the story of the Trojan Wars, and it's all about the hero Achilles and his rage. It's all about wrath and rage and revenge, and that's what gets you through. Like I don't know. Can you do your best,
Explains a lot,
Boris? Because we've got a translation of the first stanza. Do we need a wig?
don't know if I can do it
Have we
to
got a
the
wig
thing.
for Paul?
Sing, goddess, Achilles' rage, black, murderous, that cost the Greeks incalculable pain, pitched countless souls
Vegan sausage rolls.
of heroes into Hades dark, and left their bodies to rot as feasts. For dogs and birds, as Zeus' will was done, begin with the clash between Agamemnon, the Greek warlord, and godlike Achilles. Which of the immortals set these two at each other's throats?
A beautiful new blue passport.
Apollo, Zeus' son, and Leto's offended by the warlord. Agamemnon had dishonoured Chryses, Apollo's priest, so the god struck the Greek camp with plague, and the soldiers were dying of it.
I sometimes succumb to flapjacks.
Wow.
It's like he was in the room. I mean, Boris in that clip looked like a bit he was possessed, and now people may be wondering whether I'm channeling Boris.
I don't know. This could be your new party piece. I think you could get it in Greek too. I reckon.
Yeah.
I reckon. But yeah, so it's a poem all about Achilles' rage and plague and soldiers dying and dishonor and clashes between the gods, and the gods are all warlords. And this is comfort and solace.
Yeah.
You know?
Makes you feel warm and nice.
He does not turn to Psalm 23. He turns to this. And kind of extraordinarily, I wonder if you'd said to people 20 years ago, the occupant of number 10 would be there with his girlfriend who has one child, and then they get married and has another child. And the current occupant of number 10 doesn't know how many children he has. It is a matter of dispute. I think we've even got a kind of a family tree for Boris.
It came to a point where you think it would be quicker just to say who's not related to Boris.
Yeah.
So what we've got here, we've got Alexander Boris de Pfeffel Johnson. And so we've got, was that a first marriage there with no children?
Yeah.
But then he was married to Marina Wheeler, and he's got 4 children.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Lara Lettuce, Milo Arthur, Cassia Peaches, Theodore Apollo. During that time, he had an affair, though, with Helen McIntyre, and he had a child named Stephanie. And then it says there's a possible extra child from an extramarital affair as well.
Yeah.
Don't know if that's supposed to... I don't know whether that's supposed to go with that one or the one with during Carrie Simmons there.
Mm-hmm.
Hard to tell. But then, so Carrie Simmons, 2 children there as well. So that's at least, what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 confirmed children.
Yes.
Possibly another one.
Yes. And yet when he was asked on one interview, when Romy Iris Charlotte was born, how many children do you have? 6 now. And he was like, yes, 6. Which she was at least his 7th. But yeah, a man who doesn't know how many children he has. And if you told somebody 20 years ago, the occupant of number 10
doesn't know how many children he has,
would be in there with his girlfriend, who he was having an affair with when he was a cabinet minister, and tried to get her a job for $100K plus, while he was having an affair with her, cheating on Marina Wheeler. And I'm very aware that I sound like I'm about 150 years old by saying, have people noticed how many children? And not all by the same woman. I'm very much aware of how this dates me, and I sound like an old curmudgeon. But I'm just noticing, in terms of the moralities of different eras. And yet at the same time, the one thing that brought Boris Johnson down was that he lied about Chris Pincher. So it's not that we as a society have no, sexual morality at all. We've got very finely tuned sexual moralities.
Yeah.
It's just kind of infidelity and extramarital affairs.
That's okay. Not too bad.
Is not even worth commenting on. And if you do, you're like me. You're like a total,
sure. Yeah.
But what brought him down after all, what was his nickname when he was at the Telegraph? He was called the greased piglet. Because you couldn't grab him, you couldn't pin him down. Greased piglet, he'd always escape. And finally, what is it that pinned down the greased piglet? It was lying about sexual harassment. So is Boris... Well, I don't want to say he's pre-Christian, because I've just written a book saying everybody has been shaped by the Christian Revolution.
Yep.
It's the air we breathe. He hasn't been able to escape a Christianizing influence. None of us have. But he's pretty like his behavior is saintly by Roman standards.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's appalling by our standards. So then comes the question, okay, so our politics isn't pre-Christian, even if Boris acts pre-Christian. Our politics is Christian and post-Christian. And let's have a think about the ways in which it's Christian and the ways in which it's post-Christian. It's Christian in that much of Boris's behavior is not on by public standards.
Yep.
So Partygate, for instance, like what is it within our Christian sensibilities that makes us draw the line at Partygate?
The hypocrisy of it, the idea that basically you do as I say, not as I do.
Yes.
That kind of thing. As leaders,
Yes.
we don't follow the same rules as you.
Yes.
Actually, we don't. We're like, no, because we're so strong into a kind of equality.
Yes.
Doesn't matter who you are.
Yes.
We all should be on the same page.
Yeah. Yeah. All of which are profoundly Christian ideas. You say to a Caesar, rulers shouldn't be under the same, He would absolutely assume that rulers should not be under the same rules. What does it mean to rule?
Why be ruler otherwise?
Of course, I set the rules, and other people, have to obey them. And then hypocrisy. Again, Jesus coins the phrase, the hypocrite. That was a Greek word referring to a masked actor. And then suddenly Jesus starts calling all the religious authorities. You're all actors. You're all wearing a mask. Why should we be? Why should we have integrity? Why should we act the same when we're in private and in public, in this venue and in that venue? Why should we serve as rulers? That's a foundation.
Why not rule?
Why not rule?
Losing the name, right?
Yeah, that's right.
You be a servant, you can serve. I'll be a ruler, and I'll rule.
Yeah, I mean, as I say in The Air We Breathe, one of the great markers about how Christianized we've become is that we literally used to worship our rulers as gods, and now they take the name ministers, which means servants. They used to be gods, now they're servants. Boris is meant to be the chief servant of the United Kingdom, and he is not meant to ascend the throne through a Darwinian struggle. And that's another profoundly Christian thing. It is meant to be the consent of the people. It is meant to be by persuasion and argumentation and never by force. And it is meant to be rule of the people, by the people, and for the people, which is a phrase that was sort of emerged in the medieval times. In fact, it was John Wycliffe in his preface to the New Testament, I think he first coined the phrase, rule of the people, by the people, for the people. And he was actually considering Christ's high priesthood. It is a Christian idea that the one on the throne is one of us. And we used to talk about sending our man to the seat of power. You send your man to Westminster to represent Eastbourne in the place of power. And that's all it's kind of a reflection on a very Christian idea that Christ has ascended from the earth as our brother to reign as man for man. So rule of the people, by the people, for the people is this deeply kind of Christian idea. And so we've kind of gotten rid of Boris, sort of, maybe.
Who knows? May cling on.
Man, is he like a greased piglet? Or is he
right
like a muscle kind of limpet clinging onto the hull of the ship? But now we have a whole bunch of people who are falling over themselves to present themselves as servants and wanting to seek not the grand popular vote, because they don't want to go to an election. But at least within the Tory party membership, they want to seek the consent of the people in order to rule. So that is something that's kind of deeply Christian, really. But then there's a question of, are we now post-Christian? Have we now taken on Christian values and kind of supercharged them such that we don't just believe in equality, now we believe in individualism. And we don't just believe in compassion, we believe in competitive victimhood. And we now have rules of the game that have been totally shaped by Christianity, even though we've kind of been detached from those Christian moorings. And I thought one thing that kind of shows that we're kind of in post-Christian territory is, let's have a look at Rishi Sunak's campaign video, which he released, I think, like the day after he resigned, or like 2 days after he resigned, and people sort of ask, he got that done really pretty quickly.
Family is everything to me, and my family gave me opportunities they could only dream of. But it was Britain, our country, that gave them and millions like them the chance of a better future. I got into politics because I want everyone in this country to have those same opportunities, to be able to give their children a better future.
So what strikes me about, I mean, this is just emblematic of all the videos, is that everyone in politics is trying to tell their story, like their personal story of their humble beginnings, right? And again, you want to be the David figure who is just the lowly shepherd boy who, for such a time as this, really me, and again, there's something really deeply Christian about it. Because we love that story. We love the rags to riches story. And we love the diversity. And we love people, coming from backgrounds that have traditionally been marginalized, and somehow they triumph against the odds. And we live in a society in which we don't have a steep hierarchy, in which, you can get to the top. Mm-hmm. So we love that. But we just constantly tell stories. It's just like everyone's campaigning is just like, well, speaking as ... Does that bother you? Does it only bother me? It probably only bothers me.
Well, I mean, it all feels quite false anyway.
Yeah.
I mean,
right.
The whole that kind of, I'm still Rishi from the block kind of thing. Don't be fooled by the rocks that I got. He's worth hundreds of millions, and that you say, I'm just one of the people.
We looked it up the other day. How much is Rishi Sunak worth?
With his wife, 730 million.
With his wife, 730
million.
Right.
Right, there you go. So, I mean...
But again, like, here's a kind of a post-Christian thing, because, like, pre-Christian, you'd just be like, yeah, I'm rich, so I'm better, so elect me. Or, I should be your ruler.
But isn't that what they think anyway?
Yes.
Because isn't that, I mean, because we kind of say... We know as if that's not what they think. Like, clearly they do think that.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Whereas, perhaps.
Yeah.
Perhaps that doesn't mean they're right for the job.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But you could imagine a universe in which Rishi Sunak says, "Well, of course I should be the chancellor, or of course I should be in number 11 or number 10, but definitely I should be in charge of the purse strings of this country. Look how good I am at handling money. I got loads of it."
Right.
You can imagine a universe in which,
just
let the billionaires rule us.
Mm-hmm.
They clearly know what they're doing. They know how to handle money.
Yeah.
Put me in charge of a budget that has that many zeros on it. I'll faint. I won't know what to do.
Yeah.
Put him in charge. He knows what to do with money. Oh, good.
It's easy, isn't it? You give it to your friends. Isn't that what you're supposed to do?
Is that right? Is that what you want me to do?
Yeah.
But yeah. So even Rishi, who's worth 738 million? 730. I just gave him an extra
8 million. What's 8 million to him? Just found it down the back of the sofa.
730 million. But he still has to spin the story as I'm still Rishi from the block.
Yeah.
And then when he was asked about his wife's fortune, he was like, well, her parents started out with 100 quid in the bank, and that's a rags to riches story. We are so in love with the rags to riches story.
Mm.
Like, why? Well, because of Christianity, because of Jesus. Like a carpenter rules the universe. Like we love the rags to riches story, So of course he's got to package it as that, even though we're all kind of Darwinians at heart, and we all just want to live in a dog-eat-dog world, especially if we've got money. But it's what really bugs me is they don't have long in these debates. We'll see how absolutely boiled down these arguments are when they're debating one another to be the next leader, and they don't have long. And they spend all their time talking about, well, speaking as this kind of person, and you're just like, well, either you've got wisdom and experience, or you don't.
Yeah.
Again, I'm sounding 150 years old, aren't I?
And well, no, but also like that whole kind of speaking as this, speaking as that. That so much today is based on I have an authority on this because of this, because I am this or I am that. But there's an assumption in there that if you're not that, you can't speak on those things.
Yes.
So it seems a bit self-defeating almost to be like, as this, I can speak on this. So you're saying, well, you can't speak for the rest of us then, because if you're different to me, that means you can't speak to me.
Yes.
But for some reason, at the moment now, the idea is you can only speak on anything.
Yes.
If you're directly.
Yes.
Yeah.
You
can only speak on issues around certain rights if you are someone who's involved in that area, or
which moves into the post-truth thing. Like we used to be into truth, you know, like just say something because it's true, and it can be demonstrated to be true because it accords with reality.
Either you can be someone who can represent everyone, or you can't. I mean, and of course no one can truly in the political sphere be a good representative for everyone, but someone might be able to try and hear different voices,
right,
and take on advice from all areas and walks of life and say, right, we need to try and make this work. So you can either do that, or you can be the person who says, well, I am this thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, are you saying you're useless for everything else then, if that's your thing?
Yeah. It's kind of the death of democracy at that point, isn't it? Because how can you speak for others or rule for others? Yeah. There's got to be a common humanity for democracy to work. Otherwise, it's speaking as a, then you go and rule all the...
You go rule all them.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And what's that called? That's like tribalism.
Yeah.
So some of this post-Christian kind of this hyper focus on the individual leads to some pretty silly outcomes, really, and all this kind of identity politics, which fascinatingly, it's on both sides. It's with Labour as well as and with the Lib Dems as well as with the Tories, identity politics. But you would more associate identity politics with Labour than with the Tories. Fascinatingly, though, they've got a more diverse ethnic mix to their leadership kind of campaigns than Labour did. I mean, Labour had a bunch of women in Keir Starmer, and they elected Keir Starmer, right? And Labour, you would think, would be more interested in diversity. They certainly talk more about diversity. Whereas for the Tories, they don't talk as much about identity politics. In fact, Kemi Badenoch kind of speaks quite strongly against being considered in her ethnic terms, or just because she's a woman. We've got a clip of her just in a second. She speaks against this kind of identity politics and dividing us up by race, and she is more representative, I guess, of a conservative view. And yet the Conservatives have managed to achieve what Labour hadn't achieved in terms of its racial mix. I think that's very interesting. Let's have a look at Kemi talking against critical race theory here.
What we are against is the teaching of contested political ideas as if they are accepted fact. We don't do this with communism, we don't do this with socialism, we don't do it with capitalism. And I want to speak about a dangerous trend in race relations that has come far too close to home to my life, and it is the promotion of critical race theory, an ideology that sees my blackness as victimhood and their whiteness as oppression. I want to be absolutely clear, this government stands unequivocally against critical race theory. Some schools have decided to openly support the anti-capitalist Black Lives Matter group, often fully aware that they have a statutory duty to be politically impartial. Black lives do matter, of course they do. But we know that the Black Lives Matter movement, capital BLM, is political. I know this because at the height of the protest, I've been told of white Black Lives Matter protesters calling, and I'm afraid I apologize for saying this word, calling a black armed police officer guarding Downing Street a p***. That is why we do not endorse that movement on this side of the House. It is a political movement, and what would be nice would be for members on the opposite side to condemn many of the actions that we see this political movement, instead of pretending that it is a completely wholesome anti-racist organization. There is a lot of pernicious stuff that is being pushed, and we stand against that. We do not want to see teachers teaching their white pupils about white privilege and inherited racial guilt. And let me be clear, any school which teaches these elements of critical race theory as fact, or which promotes partisan political views such as defunding the police without offering a balanced treatment of opposing views, is breaking the law.
Strong stuff.
Yeah, certainly.
And I mean, I would say on that okay, that's a political position that people can take as political conservatives on that. I think a Christian view would want to throw into the mix, you know what, there are categories for corporate sin. There are power dynamics that are worth pressing into. And for those reasons, you might not want to throw all of critical race theory out of the out with the bathwater.
Sure.
You don't want to throw the corporate element of sin and the reality of power dynamics. You don't want to throw that baby out with the bathwater of CRT. You want to scrutinize it with Scripture as king over the top of that discussion. So I think a Christian approach to CRT is different from a merely conservative political response to CRT. Having said that, it's interesting when you see a conservative political response to CRT that is as strong as Kemi Badenoch's. You also see Kemi Badenoch. She might be the new Prime Minister of Britain. We like in a few weeks' time, there might be a black woman Prime Minister of the UK who doesn't believe that her blackness or her femaleness has anything to say to whether she should be there or not.
Yeah.
That's just a fascinating dynamic. And for those who bang the drum more for diversity, tend to be more monochrome, actually. Yeah. The drum is banged for we must be diverse, but you can tell the class of someone. You can tell whether they've been to university if they make that kind of comments.
Yeah.
You can guess their race.
Ironically, they're probably going to be more cross with Kemi Badenoch.
Yes.
For those views.
Yes.
And, despite that, if she did become Prime Minister and was saying those things, they wouldn't be applauding.
No.
They'd be quite cross about it, I imagine.
Yes.
Because it doesn't fit their narrative.
Right. To which she can and has responded, are there only certain thoughts I'm allowed to have as a black woman? please, white people, educate me in all the thoughts I'm allowed to have as a black woman. So I think that kind of points to the fact we've gotten to a post-Christian place when it comes to diversity and inclusion that has some Christian presuppositions that we're equals. And that community together, Jew and Gentile, the wall of hostility has been broken down, says Ephesians 2, and there's neither male nor female, slave nor free, Jew nor Gentile. We are all one in Christ Jesus, says Galatians 3, verse 28. There are some really Christian presuppositions going on, but they've been detached from the Jesus story, such that now we don't really want to be one around the same table. Mm-hmm. We want to be equally high up our individual ladders. And we're pulling apart and playing these diversity games and the identity politics. And so it's not a pre-Christian phase that we're in. It's been decisively shaped by Christianity, but it is moving into a post-Christian territory in which diversity and inclusion becomes a real steamroller. And even a Kemi Badenoch is not allowed to say what she just said. Because we need to raise a banner for diversity and inclusion, at which point you're telling a black woman what to think.
Yep.
In the name of diversity and inclusion, something's gone wrong.
Yep.
Something's gone wrong. And again, this is not to just fall onto the right side of that political debate. It is to call everybody above to the Christianity that informs this, and let's preach the gospel again, in which there is no male nor female, Jew nor Gentile, slave nor free, and in which all nations, tribes, and peoples and tongues are united in Jesus, rather than just equal together, claiming their own distinct identities. So there's a sign, I think, that we're in post-Christian land, all this kind of identity politics. Two more signs that I think we're in post-Christian land. One is the absolute, and I bang this drum all the time, I know, but the absolute veneration of the NHS. It would be political suicide to even think about breaking up the NHS or thinking about any other way of structuring the health service in the UK. And at the Channel 4 debate that was held on Friday night, I thought this clip is just embarrassing, and I feel like I need to have a shower after I watch this. Tom Tugendhat was asked she was a nurse in the NHS about the NHS, and just look at the kowtowing you have to do in UK politics when the subject of the NHS comes up.
were injured in Afghanistan and they came home. They may have been picked up by the Royal Air Force first, but they were handed over to the NHS for care. So thank you. You brought many of my friends back to life, and for that I will be eternally grateful. It's been an extraordinarily important moment for me. You've also given me 2 children, so I'm also grateful for that. Not you personally, of course.
Brilliant.
Because she's like a high priestess of the NHS, such that when the nurse appears, the NHS appears. And that to thank her is to thank
the NHS.
The NHS. And it's the NHS has given him children. Sorry. It's just, as someone who's not in the UK, it's just one of those things that I'm like, really? Okay. All right. And why do I say that's a post-Christian thing? Well, Tom Holland in Dominion sort of pointed out that World War II has been the shaping mythology for the West. For 1900 years, the moral exemplar for the West was Jesus Christ. Since 1939, the moral exemplar has been Adolf Hitler. And for the first 1900 years, you looked at Jesus and you said, what would Jesus do? And you'd do it. Now we look at Hitler and we said, what did Hitler do? And you do the opposite.
Don't do that.
And so where he bumped off all the weak and the disabled, we must do the opposite. Where he was a racist, we're not going to be racist. Hence, the previous discussion about CRT, etc. And where he would winnow the weak and do away with them, we will protect them and provide big welfare states and the NHS. And it's often joked that the NHS is the national religion of the UK, and there's a lot of truth to that.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see the kowtowing to the NHS and just and this woman became an avatar of the NHS. He teared up at a nurse. In a lot of other countries, it'd be just like, well, yeah, thanks for being a nurse, but we clapped the NHS during 2020. A lot of in other nations, a lot of people clapped emergency healthcare workers and emergency services and all that kind of stuff. But we clap the NHS as this savior, as a savior that we swear allegiance to. So is this another kind of post-Christian thing? And then the final kind of post-Christian marker for me was just the brevity of these debates. Certainly the last one that I saw was ITV on Sunday night, and there were 5 people still in the race at that time. And fascinatingly, like one of the questions right towards the end was, okay, what are you going to do about the climate emergency? Which is a question that is literally about everything. Like, the climate is literally about everything. What are you going to do about the world?
Yeah.
And saving the world. And it involves, obviously, all sorts of energy, questions, and whether you go nuclear, and what about fossil fuels, and all sorts of other things. And will you hit net zero? And are you still committed to hitting net zero? But like, they were asked a question about the climate emergency, and each person was given 10 seconds to respond.
Quick fire question now on climate. Your COP president, Alok Sharma, has threatened to resign if you fail to lead on the climate crisis we face. Can you confirm there will be no backing down, absolutely no backing down on our commitment to net zero by 2050 if you become Prime Minister? Penny.
I'm committed to that, but it mustn't clobber people. Our plan, it has to support our levelling up and industrial strategy and our energy resilience.
OK, Tom Tugendhat.
I'm committed to making sure that we deliver the nuclear reactors to keep us green, that we deliver the nuclear reactors that are going to drive an export economy, the carbon capture and storage in Scotland.
And you compare that to in the 19th century, Abraham Lincoln in his presidential debates was debating the other guy whose name I've forgotten for 7 hours. And people came and they brought their lunch and they followed an argument for 7 hours. It's kind of the most, they reckon that 19th century America was kind of the most educated, sort of sliver of time and place that we've ever had. And people were able to sort of do that. And I think we've, and again, the place of education within the Christian Revolution has just been immense through the medieval times and establishment of the universities and classical education and that sort of thing. One of the signs that we might be in a post-Christian age is that, wow, we only get 10-second sound bites about climate, and we begin them with 8.5 seconds on well, speaking as a minority. So yeah, there's my analysis. I don't know who anyone's going to vote for or why, but yeah, I think it's interesting to think about why and think about what are the moral intuitions that we have, what are the politicians playing to, and how have we gotten these kind of moral assumptions. Boris, let's say pre-Christian. A lot of the movements to topple him were Christian, and a lot of the ways in which we want to replace him post-Christian. But yeah,
interesting. Food for thought there.
There you go.
Things I've not really thought about before. So yeah, good to know.
Well, people can feedback and tell me how wrong I am, but yeah. It will only show how very Christian they are.
If we know how YouTube works, people will be doing that furiously as we speak. Great, guys. Thank you very much for joining us. Hope you've enjoyed that. As Glenn said, do pop your comments down below. Let us know what you think. Get in touch. We'd love to hear what you've got to say. And yeah, we will catch you for another Speakeasy at some point in the future. Until then, take care. Goodbye.
God bless.